Oh man, Diego has been full of energy this morning. He's given me a hard time. But we are ready for a read aloud. Get a little light on the situation, get a little sip of coffee. Let us see what happens and see if we can answer a couple of these questions. Chapter 27. It was Zach's idea for him and Kate to spend spring break at the Harriman's house on eastern Long Island. His mom was away again on the campaign trail. Uncle John had come and left again. It occurred to Zach that he traveled even more than his dad used to. He wondered, not for the first time lately, what Uncle John actually did besides being the family lawyer, and just how much had he been involved with his dad's secret missions. Anyway, with no one around besides Alba, Zach was eager to leave the city behind for a week. He remembered his dad telling him once the best time to go to the beach was when you had it to yourself. Zach, Kate, and Alba took the jitney out, Zach thinking that the last time he had gotten on this bus, he'd ended up a whole new person with a whole new life, even if that seemed to be on hold right now, like somebody's finger was on the pause button. As soon as they were in the house, in the town between Eastern Hampton and Montauk called Amagansett, probably saying that wrong, Amagansett. Zach and Kate got their bikes out of the garage and rode them the half mile to the beach. Kate had brought a blanket and snacks. They plopped down on the blanket and took off their sneakers with the ocean in front of them. They felt as if the rest of the world were behind them. Staring at the water made Zach feel small and normal again. "Hey, stranger," Kate finally said. It made him smile. "I've gone all strange on you, haven't I?" She said, "My general thinking is that developing superpowers will do that to a person." "You know," he said, "I was thinking something on the way out." "Snoring is called thinking now." "Wow, who knew?" "Seriously," Zach said, "I was thinking that I missed the days when Spence Warren was the biggest problem in my life." "Yeah," Kate said, high-fiving him. "Good times." She propped herself up on an elbow, turned to face him. "Did some new goon guy show up that you haven't told me about?" "Nah, but it's not exactly as if I've been prowling around looking for any." When he'd gotten out of the hospital, he'd admitted to her about being scared, not only of his own powers, but of whatever powers were out there lining up against him. "You can handle anything anybody throws at you," Kate said, "with my help, of course." The brave girl, letting Zach know she was still there for him. "I don't recall winning any medals in my last event," he said. "You'll be better next time," Kate said. You sure about that?" "Bring it," she said. He laughed. "Right, bring it. At least one of us feels invincible. It's hard for me to even believe anything that's happened over the past few months. At times, none of it feels real." Kate was quiet for a long minute, and then she said, "Let's take a ride out there." They both knew where there was. "You mean it?" "I should have made you take me with you the first time," she said. They rolled up the blanket, dropped it at the house. Kate told her mom they were going for a bike ride. Alba told them to be safe and be home in time for dinner. "Zach," Alba called from the kitchen, "you watch out for my girl." "Always," he called back. They put on their helmets, went out to Route 27, and headed east in the bike lane with Zach in the lead, occasionally yelling at Kate to pick up the pace. "The only way for you to outrace me, Harriman, would be in a car." Maybe it was a 10-mile ride, maybe less, but the distance and time seemed to pass quickly. Once they passed through the town of Montauk, Zach remembered the route to the field as if his bike had a GPS attached to the handlebars. When they got there, they leaned their bikes against the stone wall by the road, Zach half expecting Mr. Herbert to pop out from behind it and yell, "Surprise!" But he didn't. It was as isolated as it had been back in November. There was an occasional car today. A couple of guys who looked as if they were training for the local track team ran by them on the road and smiled. Zach and Kate smiled back, then hopped over the wall and headed into the field. 5 months since he'd been here, but in a lot of ways it felt like yesterday. In a voice barely above a whisper, Kate said, "This feels like a cemetery." Maybe, because it is. New green grass had begun to grow where the nose of the plane had hit. The whole area generally looked more alive now. To Zach's eyes, it seemed like less of a crater, more like a wound that had begun to heal. Kate just stared, not saying anything. Finally, she said, "Which direction did the old man come from?" He showed her. Then he pointed to where Mr. Herbert had run away from him into the high grass. Zach told her again how he'd followed him into the grass and ended up in Central Park before he'd come to find her at the Knicks game. Wow, Kate said. So which is it, he said. Dream or nightmare? A little bit of both. They looked around in silence for a few minutes. Zach realized there wasn't much to see, really. There was just the tall grass and the sound of the wind through it, the faint crashing ocean waves in the distance. You ready to head back, he asked. Kate nodded. They made their way back to their bikes and strapped their helmets on. They could see the two track guys coming back from the direction of the ocean. A truck passed by. Zach took one last look back, feeling like waving goodbye to this place, knowing somehow in that moment he was never coming back. He'd found out as much here as he was ever going to find. If there were any answers to be found, they'd have been found elsewhere. He reached into his pocket and felt both Morgan coins, his and his dad's. No heat coming off them today, no light, nothing. More than a half year now since his dad had died. Already he was having a hard time recalling his father's face. Let's hit it, Zach said, disgusted with himself. Whoa, nice bikes, one of the runners said. He was a tall redhead. His friend had a crew cut, buzzed so close to his head that Zach thought for a minute he'd shaved it. Both wore t-shirts with cut-off sleeves. The one with the crew cut had a tattoo on his upper arm, and Zach couldn't make it out. He told himself they were just a couple of locals out for a run, no knit caps here, no giants. No threat, no sweat. I'm sorry, he said. The redhead said, I was just saying what nice bikes these are. He turned to his buddy. A lot nicer than we ride. Right, Eric? In a small voice, Kate said, Zach, let's go. The one called Eric said, look. Looks like they cost more than my mom's Taurus. Easily, the redhead said. Eric said, I always wanted a sweet bike like these. How many speeds you got on these babies? You know something, Zach said, keeping his voice even. I don't even know. But if you guys will excuse us, we'll be getting back. Eric reached out for the handlebars of Kate's bike, then said, How about if I just take yours for a quick spin? Kate tried to hold on, but Eric was too strong, pulling the bike towards him. Kate stumbled as she let go, nearly falling. Oops, Eric said, draping a leg over the seat and sitting down. Give her back her bike, Zach said. Make me, he said. It was on now, and they all knew it. Zach felt the familiar heat. Fine with me, he said. Maybe they were just a couple of high school kids thinking they could pick on a couple of younger kids because they were bigger, because there was no one around to stop them. They were wrong. Somehow, Zach knew the next move that was made couldn't be theirs. So he covered the distance between him and Buzzcut with a blinding first step he hadn't used in a while and lifted Kate's bike right out from underneath him. Eric landed on the ground. He wasn't down for long, though. Zach lifted him up by his t-shirt and tossed him over the stone wall and into the field. It should have been just Zach and the redhead kid then, only they had company. Zach heard the truck before he saw it, turned and saw it was the same truck they'd seen pass not 2 minutes ago. I know, trouble. It had turned around and skidded to a stop on the side of the road. Two guys got out, one from the driver's side and another from the passengers. Coming to help? The driver walked towards Zach and the redhead, saying, There a problem here? Something didn't feel right. Zach's senses were on fire. He shifted his eyes and saw the passenger about to reach for Kate. Zach, she said. Zach turned his head to her, just long enough for the redhead to get behind him and put him in a bear hug. Worthless. Zach flipped him with ease into the driver of the truck, the force of the collision taking them both down. And just like that, Zach knew he was back. By now, the other guy from the truck had Kate by the arm and was dragging her toward the truck. She kicked him hard in the only place she could reach, the back of his right knee. He yelped in pain, and Kate prepared for another attack, but Zach beat her to it. He covered the distance between them in the air like a gust of wind and picked him up and carried him, flying again. He pulled the guy off Kate, dragged him away from her, and pinned him up against the side of the truck, hard. Go, he said to Kate. Get on the bike and go. She shook her head. I'm not going anywhere, she said, and Zach knew she meant business. The other three were all back on their feet and coming after him. No time to argue with Kate. He had to focus on them. Zach felt someone's hand on him, grabbing for his shoulder, trying to pull him off the guy he had pinned to the truck, and it was suddenly as if Zach were everywhere at once, elevating, spinning in the air, backhanding all of them. Wow. One after another, watching them all go down. He landed fists in front of him, ready to spring. One by one, they got back to their feet slowly, all of them ready to make another run. Zach stole a quick look at Kate, who didn't look scared now or even surprised, who just stared at him and mouthed these words, Bring it. They spread out around him, moving in slowly. The driver of the truck was now holding a tire iron. He swung it at Zach, who slipped the shot with ease. Keep moving, he told himself, remembering the giant. No clean shots. Then he rolled away from a wild punch thrown by Eric, spinning away and simultaneously kicking the legs out from underneath the redhead. The passenger from the truck was the last one standing. Zach looked at him. Bring it, he said. Then he heard a voice behind him. Stop! A voice he knew, even if he'd never heard it this loud. The old man. The passenger seemed to shrug. Whatever you say, he told Mr. Herbert. Zach turned to the old man. They're with you, he said. They've all been with me, Zach, man, from the start. Wow. Mr. Herbert. All right. Let's pause there, and we'll do a little extra reading tomorrow. It's Friday. It's beautiful. I want you to get outside, enjoy the weather, and we'll try and figure out some of these questions tomorrow. Hope you're enjoying the story. Are you? I'll take that as a yes. We'll see you tomorrow. What'd you think? Is that good? Okay. I'm getting the silent treatment.